Welcome to the first ever international edition of Sharing Sox. I'm duty geezer Leigh Allan. With me, my son, and back to being West Coast correspondent since he's home in LA, Will, is with me. I'm the Southeast Coast correspondent, that being the Southeast Coast of course, the Isle of Man. For those of you unfamiliar, a little kind of dot in the Irish Sea. Beautiful place. We've been all over it. And we are confident this is the first ever podcast of Sharing Sox from the Isle of Man. We are ultimately confident that it's the first White Sox podcast from the Isle of Man. And I believe we have a lesser chance than the White Sox chance of being in the World Series that there's ever been a Major League Baseball podcast from the Isle of Man. So we're innovative in a lot of ways here. We're so innovative that yesterday our whole system broke down, but it turns out it's because somebody cut cables in California. Isle of Man's working great.
So, yeah, it's pretty crazy that you've got better reception on Isle of Man than we have in Los Angeles at this time.
Now, I am on a phone instead of a laptop, so if the picture gets shaky, that's because I'm shaking, and it's the way it goes with old people. Meanwhile,
looks good now. Yeah.
Let us talk White Sox. Start with the fact that the Andrew Vaughn era is thankfully over.
It's over, and because we did not get to do this correctly yesterday morning, we have seen Aaron Civale pitch for the Chicago White Sox now, and actually look pretty good.
Yeah, well, we should say that we're recording this on the 16th of June, the day after the Sox got swept in the Texas series, but got swept because they can't score any runs, not because the pitching wasn't pretty good the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Civale, if you had heard the first 7 minutes the only 7 minutes of our podcast yesterday before it got taken away by a fiber optic cable cutting criminal, we talked about whether or not Aaron Civale was actually going to be any good and whether or not he was going to be able to eat some innings for us. And while he didn't go deep into the game necessarily, he put in some quality innings. The fear is if you get traded to the White Sox, are you going to go out there and try to make something of yourself, or are you going to collapse like a dying star? And Civale seems to have decided he's going to prove something, at least prove that he.
I'm sure he wants to get traded to a contender. He's hoping he's worth some kind of mid-level prospect and can play for somebody where the games count.
If he has a really great month, there's a good chance that he will do just that.
And he has his history is strong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pre-injury history.
I haven't seen. Have you seen? Did Vaughn play for Milwaukee yet? Has he played a game for them yet?
Yeah, he got assigned to AAA, so I presume not.
Okay, so he's definitely not playing for them. So I do think the Sox. I was shocked by this deal when it happened. It kind of felt like the White Sox have been so desperate to get out of this Andrew Vaughn situation that the second the article dropped about Civale giving the Brewers crap for trying to move into the bullpen, they picked up the phone and said, "You got 5 seconds to say yes." 5, 4, 3, 2.
I wouldn't be shocked if that's not exactly what happened.
Yeah, and
or the other way, the Brewers made the call and said, "Look, we'll take your problem child if you'll take ours."
Yeah.
And I expect, Andrew, that the Brewers' first baseman is a pretty good hitter, but their backup is really bad, and Reese has been Huskin's been in a slump for about a week now, a bad slump. So it's possible that Vaughn could make it up and get a crack. And I wish him well. I mean, it's not like he's a bad kid or something. He just
he actually seems like a great guy.
He's not a decent Major League Baseball player.
Yeah, it seemed like the team, teammates, for the most part, there were some outspoken teammates that talked about his work ethic, but it seemed like for the most part, teammates liked him enough and seemed like a good guy for the community for the most part. So absolutely wish him well. It's one of those situations where, of course, you don't want to see the guy you traded blow up to be a superstar. But in this circumstance, I would love to see Andrew Vaughn sort of flourish. And the thing is, we haven't seen Andrew Vaughn do anything outside of the White Sox organization, and this really funky pattern he had to pathway he had to become a Major League Baseball player. And we've talked a lot on this podcast about whether or not Bond's trajectory hurt him or helped him. Obviously, it didn't help him in the long run, but we've talked a lot about that and coming up in the COVID season and how strange that was, and to be put into left field at first, which can really mess you up if you're not playing that position and all of a sudden you're playing it at the major league level, theoretically. So I wish him well. I think it'd be great. And I think it's a good trade. If you can get even a decent month out of Civale, then you're going to get something back for him at the deadline. There's no future with Civale on the White Sox. So it's kind of, take what you can get when that moment comes. And there's going to be somebody who needs him. I mean, pitching staffs right now are depleted all over the place. We saw yesterday, and actually, I'm kind of glad we got delayed again because we got blindsided by a blockbuster trade yesterday in Major League Baseball
Oh, with Devers.
with Devers. I mean, that is crazy that came out of nowhere. I mean, my phone started blowing up, and I was like, "Wait, what could the White Sox have? What did the Pope wear today, or what happened in the Vatican today to make my phone blow up?" And it was actually my Dodger guys, my old coworkers at the Dodgers, who were saying, "Oh, I'm so glad this trade happened right before first pitch, so we don't have to worry about him getting in a San Francisco uniform for the rubber match yesterday in Los Angeles between the Dodgers and the Giants." And that trade happens because the Red Sox pitching staff is depleted. They're all depleted. Look at what's happening in Los Angeles. You go from on opening day having on paper one of the best rotations maybe in the history of the game on paper, looking at it. And of course, everybody's looking at that rotation here in Los Angeles going, maybe one of those guys will still be playing Major League Baseball in June. And that ended up being exactly the case. They are down to Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who is pitching lights out, but the Dodgers are an organization
Well,
who
they're
could
about to get some guy named Otani pitching for him. I don't know much about him.
Tonight, you're going to get one inning from Shohei Otani, which is kind of crazy that he's back. So we'll see how that one inning goes. I have a feeling it's going to go great. It's one inning, so I have a feeling he's going to do well. But that doesn't cure the Dodgers' long-term injury issues here, which could lead someone like them to find a guy who can eat innings and get you
I,
at least a
I think
somewhat
Savali
quality
will
start.
will have value, and we're getting. I mean, we're 6 weeks away now from the trade deadline, and it's so stupid they all wait till the deadline anyway. Of course, the Devers trade came in a timely fashion, but usually it's midnight on the 31st of July or whatever today's time is, and it's so stupid.
Yeah, it
I
is. The
I
the
think
premium.
MLB likes it because it puts drama in the middle of the season, but there's no reason the team should like it. It doesn't make sense for either buyer or seller most of the time. But I think Houser will draw something. He's pitching well enough. And then, do they want one of the really young guys? Are they willing to put him on the market? Maybe, maybe not. They've got Jonathan Cannon's hurt. Uh, he's the only one who's pitched much of any innings last year. So the only one who was over 93, I think, was the tops for the others uh, of the starters. So they've got that. The Athletic and ESPN, they've both done their big lists of this is what the contending teams or potentially contending teams need. This is who they should get from the 7 teams that are totally out of it. Neither one mentioned any White Sox, except in one case, Miguel Vargas.
Yeah, and I know that's kind of a person that we differ on a little bit in that I am not buying on Miguel Vargas yet, and maybe you're not buying, but not ready to sell on Miguel Vargas yet.
Yeah,
I think
he keeps plugging along in there.
I think if Miguel Vargas has a great month, you sell Miguel Vargas at a crazy premium. I don't think he's a guy where you're selling him to settle for anything. But if he has a hot month, if he keeps it because his power is ticked up, contacts ticked up, if he has a great month, I saw Friedman speak at the Dodgers a couple years ago, and he talked about how, he doesn't like to do deadline deals because it comes with a 25 to 50% premium. And that's an insane premium. It's a bad business move, technically, most of the time. Uh, I think if you can get someone to give you a 25 to 50% premium in a deal on Miguel Vargas, you take it. You take it. You keep working on this rebuild. You take prospects. You take position player prospects who might get you there. I like Miguel Vargas. I don't have any faith in his glove as he ages, and I don't necessarily see him being much better than he is right now. So I don't think the team control is the argument, right? Because you have team control of Miguel Vargas for a long time, and
Yeah.
that's very, very valuable. But if you find a team that is into Miguel Vargas and it's close to the deadline and that premium's there, that team control is going to get you closer to that 50% premium than it is the 25% premium. And
Well,
I think
I think in Vargas's case, because you got the 5 more years of control, I think you have to get 3 prospects, of which
agreed.
two are very good. Now, any prospect may not make it, but two that are
Most
in
don't.
amongst somebody's top 10, and then maybe a throw in that comes along with it in a position you need. And they have a lot of positions of need. Vargas, though, is one has looking at B war. It's B war at this point of the season. If you're over about 0.8, 0.9, you're on that path to be 2 for the season, which would be a major league regular. And he is already at 1.6, which is on the way to be close to all-star level. Amongst other position players, Meidroth is in at 1.3. And of course, Chase is having a very good year, but I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think they're going to let him go.
No.
I don't think he's a shortstop, and I think they're not thinking he's a shortstop because they keep bringing in these guys to play short who are hitting 0.42 or something. But he's a future second baseman for a very long time. And Mike Tauchman, is at 1.0 B WAR. They're the only 3 who qualify as major leaguers, according to the experts. I think Tauchman will bring something because on those lists, the ESPN and Athletic lists that I mentioned, several of the teams were looking for corner outfielders. Bad news on the Luis Robert Jr. front is they never mentioned a center fielder on any of them, but several of them mentioned corner outfielders. Tauchman's a good, solid corner outfielder defensively, and he's hitting a ton. I mean, he's got 1.0 B WAR, and he was hurt half the season so far. He's been really good. One of the very few position players, about whom we can say that.
I mean, his OPS is 881. His on base percentage is close to 400. He is
That's not going to
absolutely
stay. He's got some fabulous batting average on balls in play.
sure.
But nonetheless,
It's still happening
it's
though.
very solid. Yeah, even if he goes down 60 or 70 points in that category, he's still really solid. So
Do
I
you
think they'll
think
get something for him.
do you think anybody's going to consider, because Luis, of course, is a gold glover from years ago. We've had all sorts of issues and wondering why that hasn't stuck around necessarily. Do you think anyone would look at Luis Robert to move to the corners? Um,
I
right
don't
field stuff because his arm
I don't see
is
the value of his value is largely in the fact he's an excellent defender.
Well, if you put him in left field, he's the best left fielder in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, he could be the best major left fielder in Major League Baseball ever.
And he could. And he also honestly has a left fielder's arm.
Yeah,
So
he moonballs. He's got a strong arm, but he's got a real tendency to moonball it.
yeah, he does not have the low to the ground laser rope that I think people are going to be looking for in a right fielder. He would be probably the best defensive right fielder in all of baseball as well. But is there a world where anyone takes him for left and then hopes that they can get the offense working? Because if you can get that batting average up to 250, and then you put that glove in left field, all of
And
a
when he
sudden
gets on
Luis
base, he's
Robert,
automatically on second because he's stealing bases
exactly.
like crazy.
I realized that the tall order I just put in was raising his batting average 55 points.
Yeah.
But if that happens, all of a sudden Luis Robert becomes a pretty sexy option again. Like if people aren't looking for center fielders, but Luis Robert is okay with going to left field and to play on a contender who really needs a left fielder, I think there's something interesting there. I don't think anyone's going to take a massive risk on him at center, but he might look a little better in left. It's sort of unconventional, I know, but uh, I don't think it should be ruled out if the team is desperate for a left fielder.
I think, well, and the other category I want to bring up that it was mentioned time after time after time, actually, even more so than starting pitchers, that these contenders are looking for is relief pitchers, which makes Mike Vasil a very hot property. Maybe. And I looked up, Vasil's, this is one of the biggest differences I've ever seen on this. His ERA is 1.99, which is a 207 ERA plus. His FIP is 455, which more than double what his ERA is, which shows that he has pitched in some really good fortune,
Yeah,
really good
definitely.
luck. And some of the other, even Shane Smith is FIP is more than a point higher than his ERA. Houser's is the same situation. The Steve Wilson has an ERA of 205 and an FIP of 448. The only one who's had bad luck is Brandon Eisert, who's got a 455 ERA and a 297 FIP. So
Wow.
he used up all the bad luck. His guys are having good luck. That those seem to be the deals. I wonder though about plugging in a bunch of people. That you don't trade Tauchman or Luis or Vargas. I still don't think Vargas goes, but maybe he does. Or one of the starting pitchers or one of the relievers. That it's not an isolated deal, not a
Oh,
one player deal.
I
I
definitely
think it's
think it
going to be
won't be.
somebody with a couple, and I think that's probably the biggest chance for Luis to go to some good team.
I think you're also going to see most likely a three-team trade at some point with the White
Very
Sox.
possible.
I think you could easily see a three-team trade where three of these guys go in one deal, or at least two of them go in one deal, which could very well include unloading Luis Roberts somehow. But yeah, I totally agree. I don't think you're going to see a lot of isolated deals with great returns, but I think they could get a pretty interesting return on a multiplayer or multi-team deal. On that note, we should take our break here. We will come back, and I'm going to pose a question to you that I think is kind of interesting, and you might laugh at me. So
No,
hang in there.
I'm a little too old to play for them. I'm sorry.
Hang in there, and we will be right back on Sharing Sox. Welcome back to Sharing Sox. Before the break, we talked about potential trade targets. Um, but I'm going to ask you a question. I think the answer to this question is yes. And I think it's a kind of a hot take, but maybe not. And maybe you'll agree. In fact, I'll phrase it as a statement, and you can say agree or disagree. And my statement is
Okay.
there will be two White Sox players on the American League All-Star roster. The silence is deafening. This is a podcast.
I'm shocked. No, I obviously Shane Smith is going to be one, and so the question comes to be who you think number two could possibly be. And Miguel Vargas is the closest possibility. I'm going to say I disagree.
Well, it's not Miguel Vargas. I do agree that I think Shane Smith, barring some implosion, is kind of a lock. I think, and it's majorly a positional thing. I think Chase Meidroth is going to be on the All-Star team at second base.
I would love to see that. The kid has been a wonder. And I know preseason, one of the predicting type people from one of the, I forget, was ESPN or The Athletic or Dakota or some or Fangraphs, somebody predicted he'd be an all-star. Somebody
I mean,
predicted he'd be rookie of the year.
I don't think that's out of the question. He's if he's at second base, he's kind of a fine second baseman. He's not necessarily a liability at second base. I don't think he's a good shortstop, but I think he's a pretty good second baseman.
I think he's a fine second baseman.
Yeah. So, look at that versus the other second baseman in the American League, which is, now that Altuve's out in the outfield, we're not talking about a lot of guys who are going to be way above him. And then look at this stat line. You've got a guy who's hitting 282 right now. On base percentage is 365. OPS is 710. He's got a WAR over 1. He's got 27 strikeouts to 23 walks.
That's wonderful.
I mean, that's spectacular.
Well, that OPS is right about league average.
Sure,
And the reason for that is
we're talking about second baseman. Remember,
right,
so
for a middle infielder to be league average, it's a very good thing. That's like Andrew Vaughn was a league average hitter until this year, but you can't be that as a first baseman. You can't very well be that as a second baseman, particularly if you're defensively.
You can be the top second baseman with a league average OPS. Second basemen are not an offensive juggernaut of a position. And the fact that he plays a fine second base, he's got numbers like that. I mean, he's not a power guy at all. And I know people love power, but again, second baseman, you don't expect a lot of power from your second baseman unless it's a very rare circumstance of, like a roided Robinson Cano or something like that. But the kid is good. I mean, Chase Meidroth is good. And he is the type of good that baseball kind of needs, which is a small middle infield guy who is really smart at the plate, who's getting on base a ton, and is playing good defense. And I think it's an opportunity to showcase a guy who has a lot of major potential to be a star second baseman in Major League Baseball moving forward.
Well, I hope he is, because he's fun to watch, and the White Sox are desperately in need of people who are fun to watch. Luis has been the only one for years, and the two new catchers are good, but catchers aren't fun to watch because they're just sitting back there. There's nothing to watch, On TV there is, but if you're at a ballpark, I mean, there's just some guy there. Who's wearing a mask.
Unless there's a crazy game, when what's his face who got traded had that insane game where
Theis. Yeah.
When Theis had the game where every cool scenario that could happen happened, and he completed all of them perfectly. That's like the once in a blue moon game where you notice the catcher really.
No, we've noticed some catchers for the White Sox in the past because we would see their backs as they ran back to the backstop on their fourth passed ball of the day.
True. There is
the name Collins. The name Collins comes to mind. Civale comes to mind.
That's a very good point. It's like throwing out the first pitch at a baseball game as a celebrity. Most people don't notice if you did it great, but everybody sees you when you bounce it halfway there. All of a sudden, you're viral.
I want to get back to something. I want to get back to first base.
Okay.
Tim Elko's been sent back down. I think he had 13 strikeouts in his last 15 appearances or something. He needs to be straightened out. But unfortunately, there may be a reason why the professional evaluators didn't like him, never did like him. We both voted. I was particularly strong about you got to give him a chance, bring the guy up and get Vaughn out of there, which they did do. And I think he needs another round in Charlotte to see if he can bring it back again and do another round. But it is not looking at the moment like Tim Elko is your first baseman of the future. They went out and got Nora. That's the guy's name. I mean, is that a woman's first name? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember. And yeah, I mean, Sosa seems to be like maybe where they're leaning right now to handle that position.
Well, the best case scenario is you find a real shortstop. Meidroth plays second. Sosa, who's one of your better hitters, and this year has hung in there pretty well hitting till he got hurt. He has the same size problem that Vaughn has at first base. I think he's also about 5'10". So the reach is not good. But he's a terrible second baseman. Can't play third base. Don't even think of him as short. So maybe at first base he can handle it, and you could keep him around as something other than just a DH. There's that. I feel like I threw out the idea last year, and I will throw it out again that Andrew Benintendi should be tried at first base.
But I think he's also small.
He is. But get him out of left field. I mean, he just had another error that led to really losing a game on Sunday.
Oh, he's terrible out there. He's terrible. Absolutely. I have like a little bit of a question about your statement that Sosa's a good hitter. I know that he's got a 271 batting average right now, which or 274, which of course is, very good. That's a good batting average. The walks to strikeouts is mind blowing.
Well, you want to get mind blowing. I don't have the figures here, and I can't look things up because I've just got my phone. But look at the O swing ratios. His O swing, the outside of zone swing rates. It's Tim Anderson right, and he can do a little Tim Anderson hitting of taking it to right, but he's not as good as Tim was in his prime.
I mean, he can't be a long-term answer.
What they need to do while Sosa's out hurt is have Meidroth work with him every day on what the strike zone is. Because Chase is awesome at the strike zone, and Leigh is horrible.
Yeah, I mean, Chase is proving himself to be top 10 in the strike zone in all of baseball. Like, it's really crazy. Obviously, the Oakland A's guy, Jacob Wilson, who's hitting 369 and never takes a walk, is an interesting version of understanding the strike zone more than anyone. He's a spectacular thing to watch. But Sosa's at 48 strikeouts to 5 walks, which, and only 4 home runs. So this is not a guy who can be a first baseman every day.
Yeah, and the consequence is his OPS is way below average. And as a first baseman, it would be horrible. So, I was not a Leigh Sosa fan ever. And when they brought him back again this year, I said, oh, God, I guess we're desperate. We got to have somebody out there. And he's done better than one would have expected after his first 2 seasons. But, I'm not a big Sosa fan, which is another reason to bring Benintendi. You're stuck with Benintendi. There's nothing you can do about it. You got 2.5 more years of him.
They're stuck. They're stuck.
You might as well find some place to play him. Nobody's taking him. If the White Sox take 80% of the contract, somebody will take him. Otherwise,
right. And they're never going to do that. They're never going to do that. You're not competing this year. You're not competing next year. So there's just no reason to unload him and have to eat any money. Like, there's just And unless there's some insane scenario where someone's willing to give up too high of a prospect for him, but that'll never ever ever happen.
No, and
So they're stuck
unless
with
you
it.
eat that 80%, you're getting no prospect back. You'd be lucky to get a
Correct.
hot dog
Yeah.
vendor.
Yeah.
You'd be lucky to get a hot dog wrapper.
If you don't eat almost the whole thing, you're not getting a prospect of any value back. Yeah, I totally agree. So first base is a major issue. Let's just talk about where we are. We are at 23 and 49. The Pope is gently working his miracle into play here. It's not looking good. Last time we were on here, I talked about the grueling schedule they had ahead of them. They actually did okay. They pulled two against Detroit, which I think is better than anyone could expect them to take from Detroit. They took 2 out of 3 from Kansas City, won the first one in Houston, and it's been all downhill since then. And it's not about to get easier. It's not. They're going to have to go. They're going to play the Cardinals 3 times. The Cardinals are in this limbo where they're surprisingly good, and after they had a crazy winning streak, that they are playing competitive baseball. They have to keep playing competitive baseball. Then they're going to go to Toronto, who's treading water in the AL East, and needs to stay relevant to try to figure out their deadline plans. They're going to play Arizona, who is the victim so far of the absolutely stacked NL West minus the Rockies, and then it
Who
gets
are
even
incidentally are creeping up on the White Sox.
correct. Yeah, I mean
That's
it's slow.
not going to happen that they catch up. They're going to lose 130, but it's not that huge gap anymore where you can just go, ho, ho, ho. Now you got to go, oh.
Yeah, it's getting uncomfortably close. And then they have a brutal situation where they are going to face the San Francisco Giants and the Los Angeles Dodgers back to back. And the Dodger series is in Los Angeles, which I will be attending. And, have to shield my eyes probably from quite a bit of it. Gets a little easier after that because they get to go to Colorado for what should be the most interesting series of the entire year. I think if MLB fans are going to rally around one single series this year, the Dodgers already played the Yankees, so let's go ahead and rally around the White Sox at Rockies series, which, my goodness, it's going to be. I think the Little League World Series is around
What's
the
the
same
date of
time.
that? What's the date of that series?
The Rockies and the White Sox are going to start to celebrate our independence. They're going to start on July 4th and play the 4th, 5th, and 6th
Okay,
in
so
Colorado.
chances are there won't be many, if any, trades before that time.
Probably
So
not. No.
both rosters will be more or less intact.
And stacked, intact and stacked. That's going to be a crazy series. It's actually funny. I pulled that up right now, and the first 2 games of that series, tickets are selling at cheapest tickets on resale markets in the $45 range, which is crazy.
Holy
With either,
cow!
and the third game is around the $10 range, which tells us either that MLB fans have already suspiciously rallied behind this series, or it tells you that the Rockies have 2 great giveaways for
Yeah,
those
well,
first 2 games. And I
it's
can guarantee you it's the giveaways.
it's either that or the Magic in Chicago anymore is a Mexican Heritage Night.
Oh, I mean, the
That's a
White Sox,
sellout.
if we're going to talk about giveaways, White Sox giveaways, they are fire. They
And
have the
they've been,
coolest
in
giveaways.
fairness, they've always been good, and now since they've been
They're
desperate the
better
last
now.
3 years, they're terrific. Yeah, that's what everything that brings in fans, because they do giveaways, so they're worth more than your ticket price if you buy a kind of routine upper deck or outfield ticket. Uh,
I
yeah.
just saw a
Oh,
video of a
oh,
guy reviewing all the prospective giveaways for every team this year, and he ranked the White Sox at the top of the list for the quality of the giveaway, the
oh,
quality and
I
creativity
don't
of the
question that at
giveaway.
all. That's also top of the list for desperation because the Rockies, horrible though they are, they still draw. They have this dedicated fan base out there of crazy people at high altitudes or something. The thin oxygen gets to them. Whatever it may be, they still draw for good reason. The White Sox do not and should not, other than special things like Mexican Heritage Night or Dog Night or the giveaways, and of course the Cubs games.
Yeah, the Rockies actually rank pretty high in average attendance for an entire season, and
Yeah,
I actually
they
think
always have.
if they continue, they're the second biggest ballpark in baseball. They're at right around 50,000 seats, and a little over 50,000 seats actually, which is crazy to think about that they're the second biggest behind Dodger Stadium. Uh, I think you're going to see potentially a major uptick in attendance at Rockies games towards the end of the year. You know, in the
Be
same
there
way
for the
that
record, like it was last year with the White Sox.
exactly, and the Rockies are so unbelievably bad that it's possible they're entertaining. Um, I think what we lacked as White Sox fans last year was our version of bad was not entertaining, and their version of bad is kind of entertaining. It's kind of got a Bad News Bears vibe behind it, where you're like, oh, I want to see how they blow this next. Um, It'll be interesting. I think the Rockies could end up pretty high in attendance during the worst season in the history of the game, which I'm confident they are going to achieve. I
That's
don't.
certainly the modern record, ever since
Yeah,
the
the modern
Spiders. And,
record.
and the
Yeah.
Spiders, I hate to bring up the Spiders because it's totally unfair to them. Their owner was, their owner took literally the entire roster away, including the manager, and left them picking people out of the stands for the season. Uh, One thing, when you said the word outfield, reminded me. The Athletic this week had an article, and it quoted our physicist buddy from University of Illinois Chicago,
Oh,
Dr.
cool.
Nolan, uh,
Nathan, I think, right?
Nathan.
Yeah.
The ball unintentionally, definitely unintentionally on Major League Baseball's part, the ball has very, very slightly more drag this year than it had last year, to the point
Huh.
where identically hit balls, same launch angle, same escape velocity, same everything, wind blow, everything. It's about 4 feet shorter.
Oh.
Well, 1% shorter. So it's a case of the outfield wall. It's 3 to 4 feet shorter. So balls that would have just made it into row A are doubles, and rows that would have been doubles are caught on the warning track. And as a result, homer rates are down a little. Of course, that's very weather dependent, especially early in the season.
Right.
But batting averages are down a little. Um, we talked about OPS averages; they're down a little. Um, and again, of course, pitchers just keep getting better and better. But so those things can be affected by the pitching. But how far a ball flies there's so much physics involved with it's known
Yeah.
now. The computers know everything about every ball that's hit, what the spin rate is off the bat, all that kind of stuff. Identically hit balls are about 1% less in flight. And the
Wow.
MLB is at a total loss. They've tested balls, they can't find any difference. The only thing they can think of is that the balls are hand sewn. The laces are done by hand, and that somehow with that lace, there's just ever so much little difference this year compared to last year. They haven't figured it out.
That's interesting. I didn't know that the ball laces were still hand sewn. That kind of blows my mind, actually.
But they are.
What a crazy thing. Yeah, you would think these days absolutely not, just to make them identical, but I guess that's part of the game is you've got all these little variables and wild cards that can come into play. So technically Roman Anthony's 497-foot home run would have
Was a
been
500 footer.
501.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy. Oh, that was minor league though. I don't know what they're doing with their baseballs. So could very well be different down there if you're using a different ball. That is about all the time we have for this week's episode. Do you have any final thoughts before we sign off here?
I think we should once again point out this is the very first. We're going to step on it. We're going to go. I'm going to go all the way. The very first ever Major League Baseball podcast from the Isle of
Wow.
Man.
You're going full Major League Baseball?
I don't think there's been one. I'm going
You
to.
don't
It's possible. It's possible. It's the same possibility as the White Sox being in the World Series. So it's possible.
I don't know. I think Jeff Passan took a day trip once when he was in England, and he took a trip out to Isle of Man, and he heard that Otani was on a plane from LA to Toronto, maybe going to sign with the Blue Jays, and he had to dial in from Isle of Man for a podcast. But that is pure conjecture. I don't know if that's true. So yes, let's go ahead and claim it. The first Major League Baseball podcast to have half of its. I will say this. I certainly bet we're the first Isle of Man / Los Angeles Major League Baseball podcast.
I think
I
that's
feel
it. I think
comfortable in
that's
that.
safe. Yeah.
I feel comfortable with that. So thanks so much for listening to this international rendition of Sharing Sox. And we will catch you right here next time on Sharing Sox.